The stage rattled to a halt, kicking up dust that glittered like gold in the late afternoon sun as Lillian Morgan clutched her small valise with trembling fingers. The driver had told her they'd reached Silver Creek, but all she knew of her destination was the sound of boots on wooden boardwalks, distant piano music, and the sharp scent of horses and whiskey that defined this frontier town in 1876 Colorado territory. "Miss, we've arrived." The stagecoach driver's voice held a note of impatience. "Silver Creek, as requested," Lillian nodded, her sightless eyes hidden behind small tinted spectacles. "Thank you, sir. Would you be kind enough to point me toward the Morgan homestead? My husband-to-be should be waiting." The driver's silence spoke volumes before he cleared his throat. "Nobody's here waiting, miss. You sure they're expecting you today?" Lillian's heart sank. Howard Sullivan had arranged everything through letters read to her by the matron at the Boston School for the Blind. A mail-order bride agreement with promises of kindness and security. Now, standing alone in a strange town with nothing but darkness surrounding her, doubt crept in like a winter chill. "I'll help you to the hotel," the driver finally offered, his voice softened with pity. "Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding about the day." The hotel owner, Mrs. Whittaker, spoke with maternal concern after the driver departed. "A mail-order bride, you say, for Howard Sullivan? Oh dear, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake." "What do you mean?" Lillian's fingers tightened around her cane. "Howard Sullivan passed away 3 weeks ago. Pneumonia took him quick." The woman's voice dropped. "I'm so sorry, dear. The post is dreadfully slow out here." The room seemed to spin around Lillian despite her perpetual darkness. "But I've come all this way. I have nowhere to go." "You can stay here tonight," Mrs. Whittaker offered. "Perhaps tomorrow we can figure something out." That evening, word spread through Silver Creek about the blind mail-order bride with nowhere to go. Lillian sat alone in the small hotel dining room, struggling to eat soup without spilling it, acutely aware of the whispers around her. She's blind as a bat. What good is a wife who can't even see? Poor thing should head back east where they have places for people like her. Lillian's spoon clattered against her bowl as she fought back tears. She'd come west to escape being a burden, to find purpose beyond the confines of the school where she'd spent most of her life. Now she faced the prospect of returning to Boston in shame, or worse, being trapped in charity she couldn't repay. The scrape of a chair across from her made her start. "Mind if I join you?" The voice was deep, with a gentle drawl that reminded her of honey poured over warm bread. "Of course," she stammered, uncertain why anyone would choose her company. "Name's Henry Blackwood. I run the Double B Ranch outside town." His voice carried no pity, just straightforward introduction. "Heard about your situation, Miss Morgan." Lillian straightened her shoulders. "News travels quickly in Silver Creek, it seems. Small towns run on gossip faster than horses run on oats." The smile in his voice was evident. "I might have a proposition for you if you're willing to hear it." "A proposition?" Wariness crept into her tone. "Not that kind," he clarified quickly. "My sister Abigail lives at the ranch with me. She needs help with the house and her 2 young ones since her husband died at Antietam. I need someone to help her, especially with the new baby coming. And you're offering this position to a blind woman." "Sir, I may not be able to see, but I recognize charity dressed as opportunity." The man chuckled, a warm sound that seemed to vibrate across the table. "Miss Morgan, I've had 3 seeing women quit in the past year. The last one claimed the isolation was worse than prison. I don't need someone who'll run off at the first coyote howl. I need someone who understands perseverance." "How do you know I wouldn't run too?" "You traveled across the country alone, planning to marry a man you'd never met, all for a chance at a real life. That takes courage most men I know don't have." Lillian felt her face warm at his assessment. "What exactly would my duties entail?" "Helping with the cooking, minding the children when Abigail needs rest, basic household tasks. Nothing beyond your capabilities, I'd wager. And lodging. We've a small cabin near the main house. It was the foreman's before he built himself a place closer to the corrals. It's simple but private. Lillian considered her options, which were painfully few. What would you expect in return? Honest work, nothing more. I'll pay fair wages, too. This isn't charity, Miss Morgan. It's a business arrangement between two adults. Something in his tone made her believe him. I should tell you, Mr. Blackwood, that while I manage most household tasks, there are things I simply cannot do. We all have our limitations. I can't bake a pie to save my life, and my sister says my singing makes the cows give sour milk. His easy humor disarmed her. When would you want me to start? Tomorrow, if you're willing. I'm in town for supplies, heading back at first light. Lillian took a deep breath. This wasn't the life she'd journeyed west to find, but it was an offer made with respect rather than pity. I accept your offer, Mr. Blackwood. I'll be ready at dawn. The journey to the Double B Ranch took most of the morning. Seated beside Henry in his wagon, Lillian absorbed the changing sounds and smells of the landscape. The town's clamor faded to the rhythm of the horses' hooves and the creak of the wagon wheels. The air grew cleaner, filled with sage and pine. We're crossing the North Creek now, Henry narrated as the wagon dipped. Property starts about a mile back. Ranch house is just ahead, white with green trim. Abigail's real particular about those shutters. Lillian appreciated his descriptions, offered without being asked. It sounds lovely. It's not fancy, but it's home. Been in the family since my pa came out here in '45. Have you always been a rancher? Henry was quiet for a moment. No, spent 4 years fighting for the Union, came back in '65 to find pa passed on and the ranch in trouble. Been rebuilding ever since. The war had taken so many. Lillian had lost 2 brothers at Bull Run. I'm sorry about your father. Life out here is hard but honest. Pa used to say the West forgives any man's past but remembers every mistake he makes with the land. The wagon slowed and Henry announced, "Here we are." Double B Ranch. Boots thumped on packed earth and childish voices called out, "Uncle Henry's back." Henry helped Lillian down from the wagon, his hands strong and sure at her waist. "These hellions are my niece and nephew. Emma's 7 and Thomas's 5. Who's that lady, Uncle Henry?" The girl's voice was curious rather than alarmed. "This is Miss Morgan. She's come to help your mama with the house and with you 2 scamps." "But she's got a stick," Thomas observed bluntly. "It's called a cane," Lillian explained gently, kneeling to be closer to the child's height. "I use it because I cannot see, so it helps me know what's in front of me." "You can't see nothing?" Thomas asked, awed. "Thomas?" A woman's voice cut in, weary but kind. "That's not polite questioning." "It's quite all right," Lillian assured her. "Children are naturally curious." "And to answer your question, Thomas, I see darkness, but I hear and feel and smell many things that others might miss." "Like what?" Emma asked. Lillian smiled. "Like how you must have been eating berries. I can smell them on your breath." The children giggled and Lillian heard the woman approach. "I'm Abigail Clark," she introduced herself. "Henry's sister. I apologize for my children's forwardness." Lillian Morgan, "Please, no apologies needed. I find children's honesty refreshing." "Well, you're brave to take on this position." "The children are a handful, and I'm afraid I'm not much help these days." The strain in her voice matched the heaviness in her steps. "When is the baby due?" Lillian asked. "Another month, Lord willing." Abigail sighed. "Come inside. You must be exhausted from your journey." The main house was large but simply furnished, filled with the scents of pine wood, lye soap, and baking bread. Abigail showed Lillian around, guiding her hand to door frames and furniture so she could map the space in her mind. "The children's room is upstairs, along with mine. Henry sleeps in a room off the kitchen when he's not out with the cattle. Your cabin is about 50 paces from the back door, straight path." "It sounds perfect," Lillian said, genuinely pleased with the arrangement. Later, Henry walked her to the cabin, describing the path carefully. 6 steps down from the porch, then straight ahead. There's a rope guide I put up this morning running from the house to your door." Lillian's fingers found the rough hemp. "That was thoughtful of you. Figured it might help on dark nights or in bad weather." His voice held no condescension, just practical concern. Cabin simple. Bed to the right, table and stove to the left. Outhouse is 20 paces behind, another rope will guide you. Inside, Lillian explored her new home, fingers tracing the smooth wooden walls, the iron stove, the sturdy table. The bed had a quilt that felt soft and well-worn. "I'll leave you to settle in," Henry said from the doorway. "Supper's at 6 in the main house, just follow the bell." "Mr. Blackwood," Lillian called as he turned to leave. "Thank you, not everyone would give a blind woman a chance." There was a pause before he answered. "Out here, Miss Morgan, we value people for what they can do, not what they can't. Get some rest." The days at the Double B fell into a rhythm. Lillian helped Abigail with household tasks, finding ways to adapt each chore to her capabilities. She learned the exact number of steps between important locations, memorized the feel of different utensils and containers, and created systems to keep things in precise order. The children quickly adapted to her blindness, sometimes forgetting she couldn't see at all. "Look at my drawing, Miss Lillian," Thomas would exclaim before catching himself. "Oh, I mean, feel it." He'd guide her fingers over the paper where he'd pressed hard with his pencil, creating ridges she could trace. "It's a horse," he'd explain proudly. "Like Stargazer, Uncle Henry's horse." Emma was more practical, appointed herself Lillian's helper and guide. "3 steps to the right, Miss Lillian. The bucket's by your foot now." Abigail grew more dependent on Lillian as her pregnancy advanced. "I don't know how we managed before you came," she confessed one afternoon as they shelled peas together. "The children adore you." "They're wonderful children," Lillian replied honestly, "so resilient and kind." "They get that from their father," Abigail said softly. "James was the gentlest soul." "Henry's the only one who could match him for kindness, though my brother hides it better. He seems very dedicated to the ranch, too dedicated, never takes time for himself." Abigail's voice took on a sly quality. "You know, he's never married. Too busy raising this place and helping me after James died." Lillian felt her cheeks warm. "He's a good brother. He's a good man," Abigail corrected. "The best I know, just lonely, though he'd never admit it." Henry remained something of a mystery to Lillian. He rose before dawn and often returned after dark, the demands of the ranch consuming his days. But each morning, he'd stop by the kitchen as she prepared breakfast. "Going to be a scorcher today," he'd say, or "looks like rain coming in from the north." Always giving her information about the world she couldn't see, in a matter-of-fact way that never felt patronizing. Sometimes in the evenings, if he returned before the children's bedtime, he'd join them all on the porch. Emma and Thomas would beg for stories, and Henry's deep voice would weave tales of cattle drives and frontier adventures, carefully edited for young ears. Lillian treasured these moments, listening to the rumble of his voice mingling with the night sounds of the ranch crickets chirping, cattle lowing in the distance, the creak of the porch swing where she sat. "Tell us how you lost your sight, Miss Lillian," Emma asked one such evening. "Emma." Henry admonished. "That's not appropriate to ask." "It's all right," Lillian assured him. "I was born this way, Emma. I've never seen the stars or colors or faces." "That's awful sad," Thomas commented. "Not really," Lillian replied. "I don't miss what I've never known. And I've learned to see in other ways. For instance, I know your Uncle Henry is smiling right now because his voice sounds different when he smiles." "She's right," Emma exclaimed. "He is smiling." Henry cleared his throat. "Sharp ears, Miss Morgan. Necessary compensation, Mr. Blackwood." As summer progressed, Lillian found herself listening for Henry's footsteps, the particular way his boots sounded on the wooden floors, different from the ranch hands who sometimes came to the house. She recognized his scent leather, sun-warmed cotton, and something uniquely him before he'd even speak. One evening, Abigail sent the children to bed early, complaining of backaches. Henry had ridden out before dawn to check on distant cattle and hadn't returned. Lillian sat on the porch, enjoying the cooling air when she heard a horse approach. "Evening, Miss Morgan," Henry called softly as he dismounted. "Abigail and the children already in." Abigail wasn't feeling well. "The children are asleep." He climbed the steps, his movements heavier than usual. "Think I'll sit a spell if you don't mind the company?" "Not at all." She shifted on the swing to make room. "You sound tired. Long day." The swing creaked as he settled beside her. "Found a break in the north fence line, spent hours rounding up strays." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the swing moving gently. Lillian could feel the heat radiating from his body, so close their shoulders almost touched. "What are the stars like tonight?" she asked suddenly. Henry didn't answer immediately, and she worried she'd asked something too personal. But then his voice came, thoughtful and low. "They're like diamonds scattered across black velvet, bright and sharp, with the Milky Way cutting a pale path from north to south. The moon's just a sliver, so the stars seem brighter than usual." His description created images in her mind, beautiful in their abstraction. "Thank you. That was lovely. My pa used to say that stars are God's way of reminding us that beauty exists even in darkness." He paused. "Sorry, that was probably no," she interrupted. "It's perfect, actually." Another silence fell, more intimate than before. "Miss Morgan, Lillian," Henry began hesitantly, "I've been meaning to tell you, you've brought something special to this ranch. Not just help for Abigail, though heaven knows that's been invaluable, but a kind of light." Lillian turned toward his voice, surprised. "Light from a blind woman? Some things have nothing to do with eyesight." His voice was earnest now. "Before you came, this place was just work and responsibility. Now there's laughter in the house again. The children are happier. Even the hands have noticed the difference. I've done nothing extraordinary. Haven't you?" She felt him shift toward her. "You navigate a world designed for seeing people with more grace than most show on their best days. You never complain, never seek pity. You've turned limitations into strengths." Lillian's throat tightened with emotion. "Mr. Blackwood, Henry," he corrected gently. "After all this time, I think we can use first names." "Henry," she repeated, liking how it felt to say it. "I should be thanking you. You gave me a chance when others saw only what I couldn't do." "I see you, Lillian." The words held weight beyond their simplicity. More clearly, perhaps, than many with perfect vision ever could. She felt his hand cover hers on the swing between them, calloused and warm. Her heart fluttered in her chest like a startled bird, the moment shattered with a cry from inside the house. "Henry." Abigail's voice was strained with pain. "Henry, it's coming." They both jumped to their feet, Henry's hand squeezing hers once before releasing it. "The baby's early," he said, urgency replacing the tenderness of moments before. "Go to her," Lillian directed. "I'll get water boiling and clean linens." The next hours passed in controlled chaos. The ranch hand who served as foreman was sent galloping toward town to fetch the doctor, though everyone knew he probably wouldn't arrive in time. Births, like deaths, followed their own schedules on the frontier. Lillian sent the sleepy, frightened children to her cabin with one of the younger ranch hands to watch over them. Then she joined Henry and Abigail upstairs. "I'm scared," Abigail panted between contractions. "It's too early." "Only by a few weeks," Lillian soothed, taking her hand. "Many babies come early and thrive. James isn't here," Abigail sobbed. "He promised he'd be here for all our children." Henry stood helplessly nearby. "I'll wait outside." "No," Abigail clutched at her brother. "Stay, please, I need family." So Henry remained, holding his sister's other hand, speaking quiet encouragements as Lillian prepared as best she could with limited medical knowledge. The school had taught her basic nursing skills, and she'd assisted at 2 births there. "You need to check how close she is," Lillian told Henry privately when Abigail dozed between contractions. "Me," his voice cracked. "I don't know anything about birthing babies. I can't see to do it," Lillian explained patiently. "I'll tell you what to look for." Reluctantly, Henry followed her instructions, his discomfort evident but overridden by concern for his sister. "I think I see the head," he reported, voice steadier now. "Good. Tell Abigail it's time to push with the next pain." The baby arrived just before dawn, a tiny boy with strong lungs whose cries filled the room with relief and joy. "He's perfect," Henry told his exhausted sister as Lillian cleaned and swaddled the infant. "Small but perfect, James," Abigail whispered, taking her son into her arms. "His name is James." Later, with mother and baby sleeping peacefully and the children brought back to meet their new brother, Henry found Lillian on the porch again, exhausted but content. "Thank you," he said simply, lowering himself beside her. "Dr. Winters finally arrived, says you did everything right, said the baby's healthy, just small." "I'm glad." Henry's hand found hers in the early morning light. "I've never seen anything like what you did in there, so calm, so sure." "Sometimes not seeing the blood and fear makes it easier to focus on what needs doing," she admitted, his fingers tightened around hers. "Lillian, I need to say something, and I'm not good with words." Her pulse quickened. "Say it anyway." "When you first came here, I thought I was offering you salvation, a place when you had none." His voice grew rough with emotion. "But you're the one who saved us, saved me." "Henry, let me finish. All my life I've seen with my eyes. Judged what was valuable, what was beautiful, what was worth fighting for, but you've taught me to see with something deeper." His free hand gently touched her cheek. "I find myself thinking about you all the time, wondering what you're doing, how you're feeling. Wanting to describe everything I see just to share it with you." Lillian's breath caught. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you, Lillian Morgan, against all sense and reason, despite knowing you for such a short time. I love your courage, your kindness, your quiet strength." Tears welled in Lillian's sightless eyes. "People will say you're a fool loving a blind woman. People say I'm a fool anyway for 100 different reasons." The smile was evident in his voice. "Besides, you're not a blind woman to me. You're just Lillian, the woman who brought light back to a dark place." "I love you too," she whispered, the words both terrifying and liberating. "I think I have since that first day in the hotel when you spoke to me like a person, not a problem." His lips found hers then, gentle at first, then with growing intensity. Lillian's world, normally bounded by darkness, exploded with sensation and feeling when they finally parted. Henry rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, a statement more than a question. "Not because you need a place or I need help with the ranch. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it." "Yes," she answered simply. "Yes." They were married 2 weeks later in the Silver Creek Church, with Abigail standing as witness despite her still weak condition. The children scattered wildflowers along the aisle, and baby James slept peacefully through the ceremony in a basket at his mother's feet. Word had spread about the blind woman who'd helped deliver a baby, managed a household, and captured the heart of one of the territory's most eligible ranchers. The church was packed with curious townsfolk, many of whom had previously whispered about her limitations. Lillian wore a simple cream dress that Abigail had altered from one of her own, with fresh flowers in her hair instead of a veil. She carried no bouquet, preferring to keep her hands free to hold Henry's. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached him at the altar, guided by Emma. "So do you," she whispered back, making him chuckle. The preacher, a kind elderly man named Reverend Johnston, spoke of love's ability to see beyond the surface to the truth of a person's soul. "True vision," he said, "comes not from the eyes but from the heart." Lillian and Henry exchanged simple vows and plainer rings, his a wide gold band that had belonged to his father, hers a delicate silver ring with a small pearl that had been his mother's. "I promise to be your eyes when you need them," Henry vowed, "and to trust the vision of your heart when mine fails." "I promise to help you see the world in new ways," Lillian responded, "and to build a life of beauty with you, visible and invisible." The celebration afterward was held at the Double B, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees and lanterns hung to illuminate the gathering as dusk fell. The ranch hands played fiddles and harmonicas, while townspeople and neighboring ranchers danced and feasted. Henry never left Lillian's side, describing faces and activities, guiding her through conversations, and eventually leading her in a slow dance as the stars appeared overhead. "Are they like diamonds on black velvet tonight?" she asked, her head against his chest. Better, he murmured into her hair. They're like the light I see when I look at you, even with my eyes closed. As summer turned to fall, Lillian and Henry settled into married life. They lived in the main house, with Abigail and the children moving into the larger east wing, while the newlyweds took the rooms Henry had previously occupied, expanded with a sitting room that had once been a storage area. Lillian's days were full. She continued helping with the children, now including baby James, who thrived despite his early arrival. She learned to manage the household accounts, having Henry read the numbers to her while she tracked them in her head with remarkable accuracy. "You'd have made a fine banker," he teased one evening as she caught a mistake in his calculations. "A blind female banker, now that would have caused a stir in Boston." She smiled, comfortable enough now to joke about her condition. "Their loss is my gain." He pulled her into his lap, scattering the account books. "Have I told you today how much I love you? Only twice. You're falling behind schedule." Their physical relationship had blossomed with the same natural ease as their emotional connection. For Lillian, who had been taught that physical intimacy was something to be endured rather than enjoyed, Henry's patient, tender lovemaking was a revelation. "I see you with my hands," she told him one night, tracing the contours of his face, the strong line of his jaw, the softness of his lips. "I know every inch of you better than any seeing person ever could." "Your touch is like being seen by the sun," he replied, capturing her exploring fingers to kiss them one by one. "Warm and life-giving. Not everything was easy. There were accidents, a pot of hot water spilled when someone moved it from its usual place, a fall when a rug corner turned up unexpectedly. There were frustrations when Lillian wanted to contribute more but found tasks beyond her capabilities. "I wish I could help with the cattle," she confessed one day after Henry returned exhausted from a long roundup. "I feel useless when you're working so hard." "You're far from useless," Henry assured her. "The ranch isn't just the cattle. It's the home you maintain, the books you balance, the family you help raise." Still, he understood her need to contribute more directly. That winter, he brought home a special gift, a young mare with a smooth gait and gentle temperament. "Her name is Willow," he told Lillian, guiding her hand to the horse's velvet nose, "and she's yours." "Henry, I can't ride alone," she protested, even as she fell in love with the soft, waffling breath against her palm. "Not alone, not at first," he agreed, "but I'll teach you. We'll ride double until you learn Willow's movements, then progress from there. The ranch hands helped me map a safe trail that circles the near pastures." The lessons began in the corral, with Henry behind her, his arms around her waist as he taught her to feel the horse's movements, to guide with slight pressure from her legs rather than visual cues. Willow seemed to understand her rider's limitations, responding to commands with careful precision. By spring, Lillian could ride the mapped trail alone, using landmarks she could identify by touch or sound, a distinctive twisted tree she could feel when passing, the sound of the creek at certain points, the change in the ground from hard, packed earth to softer grass. "You're a natural," Henry praised after watching her complete the circuit independently for the first time. Born to the saddle, her growing independence brought new confidence. When a spring blizzard blew in unexpectedly, stranding Henry and two hands in a line shack for 3 days, Lillian managed the ranch operations without faltering. She organized the remaining hands, ensured the closest cattle were moved to sheltered areas, and kept the household running smoothly despite Abigail falling ill with a fever. When Henry finally returned, half frozen and worried sick, he found his home warm, his sister recovering, and his wife calmly serving hot stew to the exhausted hands who'd weathered the storm at the ranch. "I should go away more often," he joked as they lay in bed that night, his body finally warmed through. "You seem to run this place better without me." She poked his ribs gently. "Don't you dare. I was terrified the entire time. Could have fooled me." "Jenkins said you were giving orders like a general." "I was channeling you," She curled against him, savoring his solid presence. 3 days felt like 3 years. He kissed her forehead. I kept thinking of you the whole time. Knowing you were here gave me strength to push through that storm. As their first anniversary approached, Henry began disappearing for hours at a time when he should have been working the ranch. Lillian noticed, but didn't press, sensing he was planning something special. The night before their anniversary, he came to her with barely contained excitement. "I need you to trust me," he said, placing a blindfold in her hands. She laughed. "A blindfold for a blind woman, it's symbolic," he insisted, "and it's for tomorrow. Wear your riding clothes in the morning." The next day dawned clear and warm. Henry helped her mount Willow, then swung up behind her. "Ready for your surprise?" "More than ready. You've been mysteriously absent for weeks." He guided Willow away from their usual trail, heading west toward the foothills. They rode for nearly an hour, climbing gradually. Finally, Henry reined in the horse. "We're here," he announced, helping her dismount. "Keep the blindfold on just a moment longer." He led her forward carefully, positioning her precisely. She could smell pine trees and wildflowers, feel a gentle breeze on her face, and hear the distant sound of running water. "Now," he said, removing the blindfold that had never really been necessary. "What am I supposed to see?" she asked gently, not wanting to dampen his enthusiasm. "Feel," he corrected, guiding her hands to a rough wooden post. "This is the corner post of our new home." Her fingers explored the freshly cut wood. "Our home. I've been building it for months." The hands helped when they could spare time. Pride filled his voice. "It's not finished inside yet, but the structure is complete. 2 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a sitting room with big windows." He led her around the perimeter, describing each room as they reached it, helping her create a mental map of the space. "The porch wraps around 3 sides, with steps every 20 feet so you always have easy access. Inside, I've designed wide hallways and no thresholds to trip over." Tears spilled down Lillian's cheeks as she realized the extent of his planning. "You built this for me, for us," he corrected. "But yes, with you in mind. Every detail is designed to be navigable by touch. The banisters have different carved patterns to tell you where you are. The stove has raised markers on the temperature controls." "But why? The main house is Abigail's home, always has been." Henry took her hands in his. "We need our own place, Lillian, room to grow our family, space that's truly ours." The mention of family made her breath catch. "Henry, about that, I have an anniversary gift for you two." "Oh." His voice held curious delight. She guided his hand to her stomach, still flat but harboring their secret. "We're going to need that second bedroom sooner than you might have planned." His shocked silence gave way to a whoop of joy that echoed across the foothills. He lifted her carefully, spinning her in a circle before setting her gently back on her feet. "When?" he asked, voice thick with emotion. "November, Dr. Winters thinks. He confirmed it last week when he came for baby James's checkup." Henry's hand remained on her stomach as if he could already feel the life growing within. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. His answer was a kiss that left no room for doubt, followed by words against her lips. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible." That night, back at the ranch, they shared their news with Abigail and the children. Emma immediately appointed herself the baby's future guardian, while Thomas asked practical questions about where the baby would sleep and whether it would cry all night like James had. "Uncle Henry," Emma said thoughtfully as the adults laughed at Thomas's concerns, "will the baby be blind like Aunt Lillian?" The room fell silent. It was a question neither Henry nor Lillian had voiced aloud. "We don't know, sweetheart," Henry answered honestly, "but it doesn't matter. If the baby sees with eyes or with heart like your aunt, we'll love them just the same." "I hope it's like Aunt Lillian," Emma declared with childish certainty. "She sees better than anybody. She always knows when I'm sad, even when I'm trying to hide it." Lillian reached for the girl, hugging her close. "That's because some things are more important to see than what someone looks like how kind their heart is or how much they're loved." Later, alone in their room, Henry held Lillian close against the spring chill. "Are you worried?" He asked softly. About the baby, she considered the question carefully. "I would never wish blindness on our child. The world is harder when you can't see it, but if it happens." She placed her hand over his heart. "We'll teach them to see the world the way I've learned to. With heart and hands and ears. Our child will be perfect," Henry said with conviction, "eyes that work or not." The months passed in a flurry of preparation. The new house was completed by late summer with every detail crafted to Lillian's needs. Henry installed rope guides between buildings, smoothed paths, and created a garden with raised beds that Lillian could tend by touch. Her pregnancy progressed without complications, though Dr. Winters visited more frequently than was his usual practice, concerned about her blindness complicating the birth. "Everything feels normal," he assured them after each visit. "The baby is growing well and your health is excellent." As her body changed, Lillian discovered new ways of connecting with their unborn child. Unable to see the visible signs of pregnancy, she focused on the sensations, the flutter of first movements, the rhythmic hiccups, the strong kicks that eventually became visible to others as ripples across her stretched skin. "He's dancing," Henry would say, his hand covering hers where it rested on her belly. Lillian would correct with a smile, certain in her heart they were having a daughter. The baby came during the first snowfall of November, arriving with surprising speed after Lillian's water broke during breakfast. Impatient, just like her father, Lillian joked between contractions as Abigail and Henry helped her to bed. Unlike Abigail's difficult delivery, Lillian's labor progressed smoothly. Dr. Winters arrived in time, marveling at her calm as the pains intensified. "Most first-time mothers are terrified," he commented. "I can't see what's happening," Lillian explained through gritted teeth. "Makes it easier to focus on what I need to do rather than what's frightening." Henry refused to leave her side, holding her hand and wiping her brow with cool cloths. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he whispered as she pushed through the final stages. "Our child is so lucky to have you as a mother." With a final effort, their daughter entered the world just as evening fell, her lusty cries filling the room with joy. "She's beautiful," Henry said, voice breaking as the doctor placed the swaddled infant in his arms. "Perfect in every way." "Her eyes?" Lillian asked the question that had lingered unspoken throughout her pregnancy. Dr. Winters answered gently, "They appear normal, Mrs. Blackwood. Of course, it's too early to know for certain, but there's no visible reason for concern." Relief and a complex mix of other emotions washed through Lillian. She held out her arms. "Let me hold her." Henry placed their daughter carefully against her chest. Lillian's fingers explored the tiny face, tracing downy eyebrows, a button nose, rosebud lips, and eyes that blinked open at her touch. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your mother. What shall we name her?" Henry asked, sitting beside them on the bed, his arm supporting Lillian's shoulders. They had discussed names but made no final decision, waiting to meet their child first. Now, as Lillian cradled the warm bundle, a name came to her with certainty. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." "Hope Blackwood," Henry tested the name, then nodded. "It's perfect, like her." As winter settled over the ranch, the new family established their rhythms in their custom-built home. Lillian proved an adept mother, her inability to see compensated by heightened awareness of Hope's needs through sound and touch. She could distinguish between hunger cries and discomfort, sense fevers before they fully developed, and navigate midnight feedings without lamps that might disturb the baby's sleep. Her ability to function in darkness became an unexpected advantage in early parenthood. Henry watched in wonder as his wife blossomed in motherhood. "You amaze me," he told her one night as she nursed Hope by the fire. "You make it look effortless," Lillian laughed softly. "Hardly effortless, but motherhood is mostly about listening and responding." "I've had a lifetime of practice at that." As Hope grew from newborn to infant, her personality emerged curious, determined, and observant. By 4 months, she showed clear recognition of both parents, reaching for Henry's beard with delighted giggles and quieting instantly at the sound of Lillian's voice. "She watches you all the time," Henry told Lillian. "Even when you're just moving around the kitchen, her eyes follow you like you're performing magic." Lillian treasured these descriptions, building an image of their daughter through Henry's words and her own explorations of the changing baby. Hope's hair came in curly like Henry's, but her delicate features resembled what Lillian had been told of her own. Spring brought new beginnings. The ranch prospered under Henry's management, allowing them to hire additional hands and expand their operations. Lillian started a small business selling preserves and baked goods to the general store in Silver Creek, her raspberry jam becoming particularly sought after. "Mrs. Whittaker says people are asking when the next batch will arrive," Henry reported after a trip to town. "She sold out in 2 days." Lillian beamed with pride. "I'll make another batch tomorrow. The summer berries are perfect right now." Their happiness seemed complete, yet Henry noticed occasional shadows cross Lillian's face when Hope reached new visual milestones, recognizing people from across the room, reaching for colorful objects, becoming entranced by the patterned sunlight made through the curtains. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing while Hope slept inside, Henry broached the subject. "Sometimes I see sadness in you when we talk about what Hope can see," Lillian sighed, leaning against his shoulder. "It's not sadness exactly, more like awareness of what I can't share with her. She'll know colors and shadows and faces in ways I never will. Sometimes I worry. What? That as she grows, she'll outpace me, need things I can't provide, that she'll be embarrassed by her blind mother." Henry tilted her face toward his. "Listen to me, Lillian Blackwood. You give our daughter things far more valuable than descriptions of colors or sights. You teach her to listen, to feel, to understand people beyond their appearances. Those are gifts that will serve her entire life. But no buts. I see how she lights up when you sing to her, how she calms when you hold her. That connection has nothing to do with vision and everything to do with love." Lillian nestled closer to him. "When did you get so wise, Henry Blackwood?" "Around the time a blind woman from Boston showed up and taught me to see with my heart." He kissed her temple. "Besides, between the two of us, Hope gets the best of both worlds. You'll teach her to perceive what others miss, and I'll describe sunsets until she begs me to stop." His words reassured her, as they always did. Together, they created a family that balanced what each could offer, their differences becoming strengths rather than limitations. Hope's first birthday arrived with a small celebration that included Abigail's family and several neighboring ranchers who'd become friends. The little girl, now walking with assistance and babbling constantly, charmed everyone with her bright smile and infectious laugh. "She has your spirit," Abigail told Lillian as they watched Hope toddle between guests, accepting admiration and treats with equal enthusiasm. "Fearless and determined." "And Henry's charm," Lillian added, hearing her daughter's delighted squeal as one of the ranch hands tossed her gently into the air. "She wraps everyone around her finger without even trying." As Hope grew from baby to toddler, her understanding of her mother's blindness developed naturally. By 18 months, she would place Lillian's hand on objects she wanted to share, instinctively guiding rather than just pointing. "Mama, feel," she would say, pressing a flower or stone or toy into Lillian's palm. By 2, she had become her mother's occasional guide, holding Lillian's hand and warning of obstacles with a precocious sense of responsibility. "Step up, Mama," she would announce at doorways, or "Hole there" when they walked the yard. Henry watched this relationship develop with a full heart, sometimes catching moments so beautiful they brought tears to his eyes, Hope describing her drawings with elaborate detail far beyond her artistic skill, Lillian teaching their daughter to identify birds by their songs, the two of them baking together with Hope announcing the colors of ingredients Lillian identified by smell and texture. When Hope was 3, Lillian discovered she was expecting again. The pregnancy was confirmed just as spring roundup began, keeping Henry away from home for long days that stretched into weeks as cattle were moved to summer pastures. "I wish I could be here more," he said one night, exhausted from 18 hours in the saddle. "You shouldn't be managing everything with Hope and the pregnancy." "We're fine," Lillian assured him, massaging his sore shoulders. "Hope is a wonderful helper, and the morning sickness isn't nearly as bad this time. Still, I've been thinking." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "The ranch is doing well enough now. We could hire a foreman to handle more of the daily operations. I want to be present for our family, not just providing for it." "Are you sure? The ranch has been your whole life." "Not anymore." He placed his hand on her growing belly. "This is my life now, you and Hope and this little one. The ranch is just land and cattle. Important, but not what matters most." By summer's end, Henry had hired Jackson Miller, an experienced rancher from Montana whose wife had recently died, leaving him seeking a fresh start. The arrangement allowed Henry to be home most evenings and gave Lillian much-needed support as her pregnancy advanced. Their second child, a son they named David, arrived in early winter, strong and healthy like his sister. Hope, now nearly 4, approached her role as big sister with solemn responsibility. "I'll help him learn things," she promised, peering into the cradle where her brother slept, "and tell him about colors and animals and everything." Life settled into new patterns. Henry, freed from constant ranch work, discovered a talent for woodworking, creating furniture for their home and toys for the children. Lillian's preserve business expanded to include specialty breads and pies that the hotel in Silver Creek began featuring at their Sunday dinners. When David was 8 months old and Hope nearly 5, a letter arrived that disrupted their peaceful existence. It came from Boston, from the executor of an estate Lillian had never expected to inherit. "Your Aunt Josephine has passed away," Henry read to her that evening after the children were asleep. "She has left you her entire estate, including the house on Beacon Hill and investments worth approximately $15,000. Lillian sat in stunned silence. Aunt Josephine had been her mother's sister, a spinster who had paid for Lillian's education at the school for the blind, but otherwise maintained minimal contact with her blind niece. $15,000, Henry repeated, awe in his voice. "Lillian, that's a fortune." "And a house in Boston," she added numbly. "What would we do with a house in Boston? We could sell it," he suggested. "Or, we could visit, see if it might be a place to spend winters when the children are older, give them educational opportunities that Silver Creek can't offer." The idea of returning to Boston stirred complicated emotions in Lillian. The city held memories of isolation and limitations, but also represented culture and opportunity she sometimes missed in the rugged simplicity of ranch life. "I never thought I'd go back," she admitted. "I left believing there was nothing for me there." "Things are different now," Henry pointed out. "You're not alone anymore, and we could always return to the ranch. It would just be another option for our family." The decision wasn't made quickly. For weeks, they discussed possibilities late into the night after the children were asleep. The inheritance offered security and opportunities they'd never imagined possible, but also represented a potential shift in the life they'd built together. "What do you truly want?" Henry asked one night, sensing her hesitation. Lillian considered the question carefully. "I want our children to have every advantage, every opportunity to learn and grow, but I also want them to know this life, the open spaces, the connection to the land, the values you've taught me." "Then perhaps we don't need to choose," Henry suggested. "We could divide our time, summers and fall here at the ranch, winters in Boston where the children could attend school and experience city culture." The solution felt right. By spring, arrangements were made. The Boston house would be opened and prepared for a family visit later that year. Miller would manage the ranch during their absence, with Abigail overseeing the house. As they planned this new chapter, Lillian reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 years earlier, she had arrived in Silver Creek alone and unwanted, deemed useless for her blindness. Now she stood at the center of a loving family, respected in the community, with resources and opportunities she'd never imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Henry asked, finding her on the porch one evening, face turned toward the setting sun she couldn't see. "How different my life is from what I expected," she replied, reaching for his hand. "When I came west, I hoped only for basic security, perhaps some purpose beyond being a burden. I never dreamed of such happiness." Henry drew her into his arms. "When you stepped off that stage, I saw a woman standing straighter and braver than anyone in town, despite having every reason to cower. I admired your courage before I loved everything else about you. And now. Do you ever regret taking on a blind wife when you could have had someone whole?" "Lillian Blackwood," he said firmly, "you are the most whole person I've ever known. You see more clearly than people with perfect vision, love more deeply than those who have never known darkness, and bring more light to this ranch than the brightest summer day." "Papa's right," came Hope's voice from the doorway, where she stood in her nightgown with tousled hair. "You're magic, Mama. David was crying and stopped when you started talking out here. He likes your voice best." Lillian opened her arms and Hope ran into them. Henry lifted their daughter between them, creating a family embrace as the day's last light faded to the darkness that had never truly been dark for Lillian, not since the day a kind cowboy had seen beyond her blindness to the woman beneath. "Time for bed, little one," Henry said, settling Hope on his hip. "Say good night to your mama." "Night, Mama. Love you to the stars," Hope said, pressing a kiss to Lillian's cheek. "Love you beyond them," Lillian replied, their nightly ritual complete. As Henry took Hope inside, Lillian remained a moment longer on the porch, listening to the night sounds of the ranch cattle lowing in distant fields, the creak of the windmill, an owl calling from the barn roof. These sounds had become her vision, painting pictures more vivid than eyes ever could. She had come west seeking merely to survive. Instead, she had found a life overflowing with purpose and love, a family who saw her strengths rather than her limitations, and a man who had always called her his light, even in her darkness. Lillian smiled and turned toward the warm glow of their home, following the sound of the voices she loved most in the world. Sometimes the greatest journeys were the ones you never saw coming, and the most beautiful sights were the ones you felt with your heart.